this is the tutorial regarding CodeChef solution for the starter 126. So this problem statement that you can find on the codechef.com. I will attach the link in the description as well. So let's understand what this problem is saying and how can we approach this problem. So, the problem statement is saying that chef knows the projected sales of his store for the next n days. It means that there is some consecutive, sales for n number of days, and we are, having the sales for the next n days. That's what the first line is saying. The projected sales of the ith day is AI. Okay, for example, if there is a day 0, then the sale of day 0 is A of 0. If the day is 1, then the sale of day 1 is A of 1. A is nothing but it's an array. Okay, it's a representation of an array. On any particular day, chef can announce that his shop is closing, which will double his sale for that day. Okay, let's understand this again. On any particular day, chef can announce that his shop is closing, which will double his sales for that day. Okay, so what he's saying that whenever chef says, okay, now I'm closing the shop, then the sale of that particular day will be double. It means that if chef is saying that okay, on the third day I am closing the shop, then whatever the sales of a third day will be, suppose $4, it will be double, it will be $8. But since chef is a man of his word, he will not make any sale after that day. Okay, it means that if he closes the shop on the third day, then after that he cannot open his shop, right? So he will not gain any profit after that. So what it says that find the maximum possible total sales which chef can make. Okay, we have to find that how how the chef can make the possible total sale, maximum possible sale, right? Okay, the question is clear. The first line of the input will contain a single integer t denoting the number of test cases. So T means what, like what happened in the code chef, like they want to execute the test cases n number of time or a T number of time. So we have to run our logic in a one while loop or a one for loop which will go from 0 to T, right? So that's what the first line is saying. Each test case consists of multiple lines of input. The first line of each test case contain a n space separated integer. Okay, n, sorry, it contains the n number of days. So if you see, the first line is test cases, the second line is the number of days. So if you map this, the first line is a test case which is 2 here, and the number of days is 2 also, right? So it means that chef can maximum open his shop for 2 days, right? So this is what it is saying. And after that, 3 means like chef can open his shop for 3 days, like 7, 1, 2 is the respective sales for that. Okay, now it says that second line consists n space separated integer denoting the projected sales for each day, which is 712 or 12 in this case, right? Now output format, for each test case, output on a new line, maximum total sales that chef can make. The same thing, right? We have to make sure that whenever chef is deciding to close, we have to make sure that what is the maximum total sales that chef can make. Okay, the question is clear, but let's look at the constraint. Now the constraint is saying that t can be up to 3 into 10 raised to 5. So up to 10 raised to 5 range can be stored in an integer in Java or any other language, you can check. N is 3 into 10 raised to 5. It can also be stored in an integer. But if you see the AI, which is 1 goes to 10 raised to 9, it's a pretty long value. So we have to store in a long, right? So that's the data type we have to choose. And it says the sum of n over all test cases will not exceed 3 into 10 raised to 5. It means that the total number of test cases will not exceed 10 raised to 5. That's fine, right? So let's approach this problem. But before that, let's see that how we can approach it, right? So what I will do is I will copy this input from here, and I will go back and let's paste this input here, and let's copy this output also and paste it somewhere here, right? Okay, Now let's try to understand what it is saying. So it is saying, like, if you have suppose this particular sale which is 1 comma 2. So for D0, it means for D, for the very first day, and D1, which is for the very second day, the sales are 1 and 2, right? So if the sales are 1 and 2, then how the chef can gain the maximum profit? Suppose the initial profit is 0, right? Then what will happen? Suppose chef decides, okay, I will choose a day 0, okay, and I will close the shop here. Then what is the profit that chef can get? Chef can get 1 into, because I can double this profit, so 1 into 2, which will be 2, right? Now suppose chef says, no, I will not close the profit, I will not close the shop on the D0, but what I will do is I will open the shop on D0 plus I will close the shop on D1 day. So what will happen? After that there is no input. So if chef closes the shop on the day 1, then what will happen? 2 into day 1 profit, right? So which will be, what is the day 1 profit? Which will be 1. It is this is when the chef closes the shop, but this is one when chef don't close the shop, right? So plus 2 into, now chef decides to close the shop, so D1 will be 2, right? So the output will be what? 1 into 2 into 2, which will be 4, which will be 5. So this is how we are explaining, right? Now let's understand the second case. So let's delete that. So let's try to understand what the second case is saying, right? So now let's say the second case, which is 712, right? So for the 712, let's try to understand the 712. So 7, 1 and 2, right? So 712, what will happen? Suppose on the day 0, the chef sale is 7. For the day 1, chef sale is 1. For the day 2, chef sale is 2. Now chef decide on the first possibility. The first possibility is chef decides, okay, I will close the shop on day 0 itself. Then what will be the profit? 7 into 2, which will be 14. The second possibility is chef says, I will not close the shop on day 0. So the profit will be 7 plus chef decides I will close on the day 1, right? Which is day 2 in this case, right? So what will happen? The double will be the profit, right? So what is the profit? 7 plus 2, which will be 9. Again, chef can also say, okay, you know what, I will not close on day 0 and day 1, but I will close on day 2. Then what will happen? The chef profit will be 7 plus 1 plus 2 into 2, which will be in this case 8 plus 4, which will be 12, right? So if you see these profits 14, 19 and 12, what is the maximum profit which comes out from 14, 9 and 12? Which is 14, right? So chef can choose to close the on the D0 itself to get the profit of 14. So if you closely observe, we check out all the possibilities here, right? What we checked, if you go to the next page, what we'll check? We check if chef can make the profit on D0 by closing it. What is the chef profit if he closes on D1? What is the profit if he closes on D2? And then we figure out the maximum profit, right? So these type of questions, like before approaching it to like the iterative or something, I recommend to do the recursive solution for that. So what is the recursive solution? Because it is very easy to come on the recursive solution. So let's try to understand. Let's try to take again the example. So let's copy this and let's paste it here, and let's copy this as well and let's paste it here, right? So let's sorry, so let's pick this thing here and let's pick this thing here, right? So let's take an example of 712 and the output is 14. So initially chef has no profit, right? So this is the root node, suppose, right? This is the initial condition where chef has no profit, where p is equal to 0. Now chef has two choices, right? What is the first choice that chef has? The first choice that chef can have is like he can choose to open on this day, which is day 0, which is 7 in this case, right? This is D0, this is D1, this is D2. So chef has a choice that he can open the shop on D0. So if he open, and I denote it like with O annotation, then what will happen? Then chef has a profit of 7 plus the remaining he can choose, right, from 1 and 2, which is D1 and D2 essentially here, right? The chef has the second choice as well. What is the second choice? If he closes the shop, so let's denote it by C, right? So if it closes the shop, then what will be the profit? The profit will be 7 into 2, which will be 14, but after that there will be no node after that, right? It's closed, it's like dash, right? It is not having it. Now if you see these two nodes, how can we find out what is the maximum profit they can get? So whatever the result that right tree is giving, the right tree is giving, and whatever the result that left tree is giving, that is the maximum possible profit that chef can get, right? And how I came to that? Because I am exploring all the possibilities here, right? So if you see here, again here, now if I am saying that chef decided to open the shop again, then what will be the profit he will get? He will get 7 plus 1, right? This one will be copied, right? And remaining array will be 2. But if chef decides to close it, then what will be the profit? The profit will be 7 was before, but this day, because chef decided to close it and the sale is 1 there, then 2 into 1, right? It doubles the sale, which will be 2 essentially, right? So it will be 9, but chef with remaining with dash, because now chef cannot close it. So this is also one possibility. Now another possibility is chef again decided to open it, then what will happen? It will be 7 plus 1 plus 2, which will be essentially 10. But if chef decide to close it, then what will happen? 7 plus 1 was 8, plus it doubles this, so it will be 4, which will be 12. But after that there is no input, so this will be dash, this will be dash. So if this is 12, right? So what is the maximum if he choose this versus choose this is 10 or 12. So it will be 12, right? So one possibility is 12. One possibility, if he choose 12 here, then what is the possibility? Maximum possibility? Let's see. 10 if he choose what? If he choose to open all the day, right? So let's try to understand it. If you see this node, this graph, if he opens all the day, means O, O and O, then the maximum profit he can get is 10. And you can count that, right? 7 plus 1 plus 2, 7 plus 1 plus 2, which is on a leaf node, you can get the answer, right? Now if chef decides to open here, right, but close on the third day, if you see this graph, let's denote it. If we choose this path and this path, then what will happen? O and C, right? Then what is the profit that I am getting? 12, right? So it is 12. Now if chef decides to open and then close, then what is the profit I am getting? When open and close, what is the profit I am getting? 9, right? This is 9, right? So 9. And if I am saying chef say close only for the very first day, then it is 14. And what is the maximum of it? 14. So the answer is 14. So if you see how the recursive solution is giving you all the possibilities, right? And by that possibility, you can just choose the maximum. Now this recursion tree can solve any of the problem. If it's related to the DP, it's related to the greedy, right? You have to make sure that what you are choosing, right? So in this example, if you see the right side of it, I am having all the possibilities like OO, OOC, OC and C, right? If it open all the day, if it opens for 2 days and finally it close it, if we open the first day and second it close it, if it closes the first day only, right? So all the possibilities that we have here. Now let's try to code this, right? So what will be the recursive solution for this? So let's go back to the problem. Hope this is clear, right? This is clear. Now let's try to understand the Java code for it. So if you are writing in Java or if you are writing in any of the programming language, doesn't matter, right? There are multiple ways to do that. So if you want to do it like on the programming language called C++, Python, TypeScript, or anything you want, you can do that. Okay, so let's try to code this, right? It's time to code. So how we will code it? It is saying that first you have to take an integer t, right? So in the Java, you have a class called scanner, right? So you can use a scanner and say scanner is equal to new scanner, and then you take system dot in, right? So this is a pretty much standard way to take the input in Java. You can use buffer reader as well. So first thing is you want to take the test cases, so I'm using the t here. So always use short annotation, because in the competitive programming the time is important, right? So if you use meaningful variables for some time, then it becomes difficult to approach with the time. So while t is greater than 0, because I want to execute it t times, t minus minus, right? Now the second thing it is saying, ask for the n, right? So let's ask for the n here. So again, int n is equal to 0, n is equal to scanner dot next int. So I have taken the n as well. Now I have to store this as an array. So I will take int array of, or let's call it sales, maybe anything you can call. I like sales because it's a sales for the projected sales for each day, and I have to store it like new of intent. So I declare the sales for the no. Now as I said, like this will be a great input, like 10⁻⁹. So you have to choose long instead of the int, because otherwise it will be overflow, right? And let's try that overflow, right? Let's try to say int, because let's say you don't know about it, right? Now let's try to understand. Let's take an input first. Let's take this 1 space 2 7 space 1 2, right? So let's run a for loop and say int I is equal to 0, I is less than n, I plus plus, right? Now let's try to see that how can we get the input is sales of I is equal to, again we have to take the scanner dot next int, right? So next int is next. Now once you get the sale, we have to solve it, right? Now how we can solve it? So if you go back here, we have to draw this recursive code, right? We have to code this recursively. So let's call a one function. Let's call it, let's say solve, and pass this sales array, right? And because initially we don't have anything, right? Then what we will do, we will choose the first element. So once you start it, this will be a 0, right? We choose the very first, we choose the 7. We have to decide with the 7. Either you have to choose it, or we have to we don't have to open it, or we have to open it. So on the very first day, like 7, if we want to open it on the day 1, or if we don't want to open it on day 1, right? So if we open it, then profit will be same. If we close it, then the profit will be double. So let's see that. So let's pass a 0. So this will be an initial condition, and you have to store it in the suppose answer, and then you say system.out.println and answer, right? Now we have to declare this function. So go back here and say public static, and it will return integer type. It will take suppose an array, right? And it will take the initial index, which will be 0 in our case. Now what I will do is, I have two choices, right? Either include this. If you include this, then the profit will not be double, right? Profit will be same, which is 7. So we have to solve for the remaining problem then. So we will say that solve. Now once you solve, if you choose this array of I or array of index, then what you have to do is you have to solve for the remaining one, which will be index plus 1. And if you see this line, it is saying that I am not doubling the profit. I am not doubling the profit. I am just adding it and then solving it for the remaining 7 plus 1 comma 2. This is what it is doing. 7 plus solve for the remaining indexes, right? Then either this one, and there is a utility on maths library. So we will use the math.max. Either this one, or you solve it for another one, which is you double the profit. Once you double the profit, you don't need to call the recursion, right? You don't need to call the recursion here. So you just double the current profit. So which will be index plus 1 comma 2 into array of I. This is what you said, right? Yeah. And then you simply return it. And because this is like a recursive solution, you have to have a base condition. And what is a base condition? That if index, because if you don't have anything and after send 1 2, you don't need to do anything, right? So if index is greater than equals to what, array dot length, right, then you have to return 0. This is the base condition. So if the 712 after that there is nothing, then you just return a 0, right? Okay, so let's try that. Let's see if there is any compilation error or something, and then we will hope this recursive function is clear. What we are doing is, if we choose on the day 1 like a 7, if we choose, then we are not doubling the profit, we are solving for the remaining one. But if we double the profit, then we don't need to call this recursive function, because we have to stop it there, right? So if you run it now, okay, so there is an error which is saying cannot find symbol on line number 12. So this is a line number 12, right? So let's go back to line number 12, and here I am using I. So this is a confusion. So here it's index, here it's I. So let's change it to index. Now run it. Yeah, so if you see, the output is 5 and 14. My output is also 5 and 14. Now let's try to submit it. Now if I submit it, if you see that the first test case is passing, others are failing. So see, the first thing that it comes to my mind after seeing this, that now maybe the range that I am using, because it's 10 raised to 9, so the data type I am using is wrong, right? So that's what I was saying. Instead of using this 10 raised to 9 is stored in the int, just store in the long. So instead of the int, I will say long here, and then this array will store a long, and this array will store a long here, right? So just changing int to long, and then the answer will also be a long, because it will be like double and double. So this array will become long and this function will become long. So now let's try to run it. Yeah, again the output is same. Now let's try to submit this time. Yeah, great. So if you see, all the test cases are passing, it's 100% correct, and this is how your recursive solution will look like. So the solution is simply this, the one line solution, right? Now this is a recursive solution, but if you want to do it iterative solution also, this is pretty much possible, right? So I want you to try the iterative solution, because usually what happened, we come up with the recursive solution and then we change it to the iterative solution. So for the iterative solution, if you see that, okay, there is only a one recursion call here, there is only one variable that is being changing, then you just run a one for loop, right? So I will cover it in the next tutorial, but for now this should be clear, because this is the foundation of this code, right? So for the iterative solution, you just run a one for loop and just track the variable of the maximum, and then anywhere you can find the iterative solution, but this is a recursive solution, right? So what I usually do, I write the recursive solution on paper and then I change into the iterative solution in the code. Hope this is clear, and see you in the next tutorial.